Hey everyone, this is Mike Andes, and you are listening to the Business Bootcamp podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about what it means to be anti-fragile. I heard about this concept from the conference that I was at last week down in Dallas, and it's come from a book that's called Anti-Fragile. And since then I've been thinking a lot about the concept, how to make my business, how to help other people make their business anti-fragile. So let's look first at the concept of what that means to make your business anti-fragile and what you can do to make sure you are in that category. So when I talk about being anti-fragile, what it means is obviously fragile means that if something hits for instance, a glass cup, it's easily fragile. It can break easily if it's dropped, if something hits it quickly and hard, it will break. And so when we talk about being anti-fragile, what we're looking for is things within your business that are susceptible to change in environments that will cause it to break. And so what I mean by that is if your business is not anti-fragile, some change in your business, your employees, the economy, some exterior force, whatever that change might be, it causes the business to break. And I'm a big believer that you want to break your business yourself and find the holes instead of having a competitor or some economic climate break your business. So there's a couple ways you can look at being anti-fragile. Number one is ask yourself the question what you would do if something like you lost your search ranking on Google. If you're relying 99% of your marketing on your search engine ranking, what happens if that changes tomorrow? If they change their algorithm or your website goes down for an extended period of time, what happens to your revenue? Is your business fragile or dependent on that one source of leads, that Google search ranking? What if you would be considered, I would say, a fragile business if you get a lot of your leads or your marketing is coming from your Facebook page because you don't own that page. Facebook owns that domain, and they could theoretically block you, or who knows? Maybe tomorrow Facebook gets bought, or something happens and they get blocked off the internet. Like whatever it is, it could disappear. And as long as you are depending on that source so much, the thing about it is you can never completely become anti-fragile, but you can become more and more anti-fragile in many areas. And so what you got to do is question yourself from a marketing standpoint, are you anti-fragile? From an employment standpoint, are you anti-fragile? What I mean by that is if one person leaves your organization, are you going to be completely obliterated? Are you going to lose a year or two of growth because one person leaves? For instance, in our company right now, my two main people, I'm getting life insurance policies on them because if anything ever happened to them, number one, I want their family to be taken care of, but number two, the business would be the beneficiary, second beneficiary, is I want $100,000 sitting there so I can go out and buy someone that has their skills and overpay them for a year or 2 years so the business isn't affected. The reason is because I'm trying to make the business anti-fragile. I'm trying to make it where if someone dies, God forbid, an accident happens, whatever happens, that doesn't break the business. And so what you're trying to look for when you're trying to become anti-fragile is see the pain points or the weak spots of your business. For instance, what happens? Like just ask yourself all the worst case scenarios and see where the break point in your business would be and then protect it. So what if the economy tanks tomorrow? Where's your business going to be? How is it going to be affected? And what can you do now to prepare for that worst case scenario? We know that it's been almost 10 years of good economic times in the United States. And it's going to come eventually. People are saying in the next couple years, but they've been saying that for the past couple years. And I truly believe it's going to, another economic slowdown or recession is going to happen in the next few years. However, the question is it going to wipe you out, or are you going to retreat for a couple of years and just kind of draw back in? Are you fragile and you're going into debt right now? Maybe you're trying to grow and that's all fine and good, but you have lines of credit, they're unsecured, and you have lots of loans on equipment and a really expensive lease. And what happens if the economy gets wiped out and 50% of your sales are suddenly gone? Then what? And so the reason I'm talking about this is a question I've been asking a lot recently. And next year, what we'll be doing is protecting all of these places. Like I talked about the employment, how we are trying to make that less fragile in our company. Another way we're doing that is, if the economy does tank, what I want to do is have a bunch of cash on hand so that I can, and low debt and lots of cash, thus be able to, when everyone else is contracting, stopping their marketing budgets, they stop hiring, I'll have the cash available to do two things. Number one, I'll be able to go out in the marketplace and market and advertise when no one else is doing it, thus capturing market share for a much lower cost per click or customer acquisition cost. And whether it be online or in print and whatever it is, I'll be on the offense because I'll have the cash reserves and I won't have a whole bunch of loans I'd got to be paying interest on. And number two, if the economy goes down like crazy and my competitors are contracting and unemployment goes back up to 9-10% in our area, if that happens, now all of a sudden I have the cash on hand to go out and hire the person that used to be an electrician or hire the person that used to be a bank manager, and now their jobs have been wiped out, and I can hire very, very qualified, overqualified people, get them on my team. But I can't do that if I've lived a business life of fragility. I don't even know how to say it. If you've lived a business life that's fragile, if your company's become fragile, and what I mean by fragile in a financial standpoint is you have lots of loans, you have lots of interest. What happens if the economy goes down? You're going to be stuck. You're going to have to retreat. You're going to cut expenses. You're going to lay people off. You're not going to be able to extend yourself into the marketplace. You're not going to be able to go after your competitors' clients. You're not going to be able to market and advertise. So what I'd be looking, when times are good from an economic standpoint right now, when times are good, you should be trying to get to that place of being anti-fragile, paying off your debts, paying off those high interest credit cards and unsecured lines of credit, paying off the loans for the equipment, living a frugal life now, saving up cash so you have the cash on hand when everyone else is contracting, you can extend it into the marketplace. That's just from the economic standpoint of being anti-fragile. What about, like I talked about, employers, like being an employer, but what about your team members? What if a couple of them leave? What if your key person that you depend on leaves? If your business would fall apart, you put it in a place of being fragile. And if you've heard me for a while, you've heard me talk about, really a key part of separating yourself from the business a lot of times is giving yourself a salary. It's a set amount of money, and you really treat yourself as an employee of the company. Another way to look at this is look at your business from a third-party perspective. Like, step out of your business, look at it, and see if someone, whether it be you as the business owner or a manager or a key person in your business, were to suddenly die or to move, or they got sick, terminally ill, or something happened in their family that took them away from working in your business. Now you have to ask yourself the question: what's going to happen to the company? Are you gonna have to slash revenues? Are you going to have to cut back in marketing and cut back more people because a key manager leaves? If so, it's not a bad thing. What I'd be doing is, how do you fix that? How do you train the people, the 2 or 3 direct reports underneath that manager? How do you train them to at least be proficient somewhat in the areas that key individual is working in? For instance, if my office manager goes down, she needs to have trained office assistants around her to at least hold the balls in place and they don't all come tumbling down, to at least be able to know how to do the certain functions of her job that she does now that we rely on her 100%. She's so good at. But can she train other people so that if something did happen to her, and this is the biggest part I find with small businesses, the biggest thing that makes them fragile is that so much of the business relies on them as the business owner, as the entrepreneur, when they should be focusing on strategy and they should be focusing on hiring and they should be focusing on developing their team. Instead, they get so involved in the marketing and they get involved in the customer service and answering the phones and the emails and quality control and checking on the people out in the field, and then things are coming up, and they're juggling so many things that if that employer, if that business owner was ever to be hit by a bus or break a leg or had to travel out of town for a family emergency for a couple weeks, essentially the whole business would fall apart. And so the reason I'm talking about this is because this is something obviously I'm working on in my business a lot. And when I go away for a conference or something, it's very easy. Like, I would challenge everyone out there to leave your business for a week. If you don't know where you're fragile when it comes to people, the people side of your business or the system side of your business, if you don't know where you're fragile, and right now you're kind of trying to think of ways that this might relate to you, I challenge you to leave your business for a week and see what starts to break down. And I don't mean like wait for it to collapse. I just mean look for the points where it seems like there's some stress points, where some areas of weakness form. For us, right now, the sales side of the company is what takes a hit when I leave. So what happens? When I come back, I realize that, and I start to try to cover that soft spot or that weak place, that fragile spot of our company. So I've already started implementing where one of our managers is working with me on the sales side of things and estimating and converting leads and talking to customers prior to the sale. And so what we're trying to do is make this thing anti-fragile without me as the business owner. I would start there. If you're looking to make your company anti-fragile, I would start number one with you as the business owner. What happens to the business, not to your economic state or your employee, what happens to the business as a whole, as a separate organism, an organization? What happens to the business if you get hit by a bus today, or you can't come to work tomorrow and you can't for a couple of weeks? What happens to the business? Number one, be asking yourself that question. Make the company anti-fragile without you. Then what I would be doing from a people side is I'd be working down your chain. How can you then make the company anti-fragile without your second key person and your third, and work down the chain so you become from a people side, from an HR perspective, you become anti-fragile. Number two, what I'd be looking at is, so number one, how do you make the company anti-fragile without you? Number two, how do you make the company anti-fragile if the economy hits the bottom? If the bottom falls out and all of a sudden your sales are slashed and everyone else is contracting, money dries up out of the marketplace, your clients are no longer spending extra money, they're trying to cut back their contracts and reduce expenses, what are you going to do? And are you going to be in the financial position to, number one, weather the storm, and number two, actually extend yourself out into the marketplace, capture new market share so that when things come back up, you're far ahead of all of your competitors? So that's the two things I'd be asking you today to think about. How can you make your company more anti-fragile without you being involved? And number two, like when I say that, I mean like, what are the fragile parts of your business when you are removed from their company? Start with that, number one. Number two, from an economic and business, monetary, fiscal standpoint, what happens if the economy tanks before the end of 2017 or next year in 2018? If the economy hits the fan, are you going to be able to, number one, withstand it, like get through it from a financial standpoint? You have money set aside, you have low amounts of low amounts of debt and low interest and not much money being expended to service debt. And then on the second thing is, do you have the money set aside, the cash set aside to go out and extend yourself into the marketplace? So there's so many different ways you can look at your systems and procedures in your business and ask yourself the question, is it anti-fragile? Whether it be from systems and procedures to your efficiencies within your business, every single aspect of your business, I would be asking yourself the question, is it anti-fragile? What are the weak links within the chain? Because that's where it's gonna break. So if you have questions on how to start, grow, or save your business, as always, go to businessbootcamppodcast.com. This is Mike Andes. I hope you're making your business anti-fragile. Until next time, be great, because nothing else pays.